Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today is obviously another vlog. I hadn't initially planned on filming today. It's sort of just I actually have stuff planned for the day, and I realized just as I was about to sort of get ready that I was like, oh my god, I actually have something that could be interesting to film for once, and I was not going to. So this is going to be more hobbled together than usual, I guess is how I'll put it. Basically today, me and a couple friends are going to go see the new How to Train Your Dragon film. Mainly because none of us think we're going to enjoy it, so we thought it would be funny to make it a group experience. Yeah, so that's my plan. It's also my day off from work, hence going to see a film, but I was also thinking of continuing some writing projects of mine, so I actually have a plan. Look at me putting stuff together that might be interesting. It's also boiling in the UK right now. You might be able to hear my fan in the background. But I am dying of heat. As you can probably tell, I'm not wearing makeup, so I might be a little bit shiny. That's because if I was wearing makeup, just no. So my hair is up. It's not the best. It's fine. I'm wearing this thing I got in Paris because it's like the lightest thing I have, like breathable, because all my clothes are made for cold weather, it seems. So I'm slightly dying of heat, but hopefully the day is still good, and hopefully the film isn't as bad as I think it will be. I'm really hoping. I love the original How to Train Your Dragon so much, so I'm going to be really sad if I don't like this, but I am expecting to have many issues. But I'm going to continue getting ready to get the bus, and I will see you guys in a minute.
This shows how much show we are.
It's fantastic.
We are We have bills to pay.
So, I was going to do this yesterday, but as is common with me, I got home, kind of forgot to film anything, and then fell asleep quite quickly. So, obviously this YouTube channel is not like a review thing really, or anything like that, but I did want to share my thoughts on the How to Train Your Dragon film, the live action one. I know, obviously I didn't film it, because, you know, it's a film theatre, but, sorry, itchy nose. But I figured while I was there, might as well give my thoughts since, yeah, and it is now becoming my main interest again. I've been rewatching Race to the Edge all morning. I do have most of those episodes memorized by now. Anyway, so a general overview of my thoughts of the film. It's a decent film, don't get me wrong. Like, I still don't fully understand why it was made, but for what it is, it's good. Also, I am not going to necessarily be going into the whole casting thing because too much has been said about that online, and I'm not going to add to that. So I have purely decided to go with things I thought were good in the film and things I thought were weird/bad. So starting on the highlights. So I think my favorite thing about the film was, in my opinion, Fish Legs was perfect. Genuinely best character of the film. Everything about him was just so, like, he was just so sweet. He was very similar to like how he is in Race to the Edge. A lot of the characters were actually. That's another point I do bring up. But he was just so sweet. He was clearly shown to be a bit more accepting of Hiccup straight away. He was just the best boy. I love Fish Legs. He's just a little geek. He just wants to talk about dragons. Similar, my opinion, on Snotlout. He was also pretty good. He was very fun. Unlike in like the original animated film where he's just sort of mean and bullies Hiccup, they actually again sort of expanded upon his character, showed his relationship with his dad, showed how he can be funny and that he's just a bit insecure. So honestly, Fish Legs and Snotlout was some of the best characters of the whole film. I've got that there were references as well to things later on, so like fans who have seen the original 3 films plus Race the Edge, Defenders of Berk, Riders of Berk. There was a lot of references to future potential happenings. So, for example, Valka's name being mentioned in the first film, which it isn't in the original animated one. I did also, I think, see a Rumblehorn, which is Stoic's dragon, during the whole when they fly to the nest and you can see all the dragons. I'm fairly certain there was a Rumblehorn, but that might just be me wishing. Yeah, so I've written down here, like, a lot of the characters, like the main teenagers, their characterization was really similar. Like, I don't want to say it took in, like, I feel like there might have been inspiration drawn from the Race to the Edge TV show. I don't know if that's true, but I did feel like I bonded with a lot of the characters more so in the way that I did with that show. So, for example, obviously, like I said, Snotlout and his dad, and like their whole dynamic where Snotlout just wants to impress him and his dad does not recognize he exists at all. And just all that sort of like that you don't get in the original, where they're just sort of Hiccup's bullies and then he's friends with them, and it doesn't fully make sense, but yeah, no, so this one does slightly expand on most, I will say most, not all, but most of the characters that way. During the final battle with the Red Death, there was 2 changes to that I actually really enjoyed, both to do with Astrid. I guess also slight spoilers for the film coming up. Probably should have put that beforehand, but like here's probably where there's actually going to be spoilers. I'm pretty sure in the original animated one, Astrid does, like, Stormfly's tail does get caught by the Red Death. But rather than, because I'm fairly certain Hiccup saves her in the original animated one, but in this one, Astrid jumps off Stormfly and sort of starts bashing its teeth in with her axe, which is fantastic. I did love that. I thought that was a very fun scene. And also, a little bit before that, again, this is not happening in chronological order, my thoughts. They're just sort of happening as they're happening. I mean, I did write them down, but they've written down anyway. Astrid is sort of put in charge of the team's tactics, like battle tactics. So in the animated film, when they're all flying around and Hiccup asks Fish Legs to break down the dragon. That still happens. Because to me that makes sense, because Hiccup and Fish Legs have sort of bonded the most, so it makes sense that Hiccup understands what Fish Legs' strengths would be. However, in the original, like the animated one, Hiccup is then saying, okay, you two go do this, you two go do that. But in the live action, he asks Astrid to take on that role, and she's the one that says, okay, twins, you go distract it, Snotlout, Fish Legs, like draw its fire, that type of thing. Don't know why I'm out of breath. I talk too quickly when I'm excited about stuff. But to me, that makes a lot of sense. And I slightly do actually prefer that. Simply because Astrid has spent her entire life, like, training for battle, doing battle tactics. Unlike Hiccup, she's also grown up with these kids a lot closer than maybe Hiccup has. Like, Hiccup might be tangentially the correct word. He's, like, aware of them, he sort of knows them, but it does make sense that Astrid would better understand their strengths and weaknesses and how they might be helpful in battle. So, in my opinion, that's a very welcome change. Music. I know a lot of people, including myself, were very nervous that the music might be bad. They weren't certain if it would be the same music from the original. I can say the music, it was done by John Powell again. It was fantastic. Right from the start, the This Is Burke part of the soundtrack kicked in, and I was like, okay, my main worries of the music have been solved. It was fantastic. There's one bit of one song that I'll talk about in a little bit that is different. But on the whole, I'd say it was like 80% the same, and it was absolutely lovely to hear, because I don't think I would have been able to handle the film had the whole soundtrack been different. Another really impressive thing to me is like the sets and location. So I haven't done too much research into this, but I don't know if they did CGI with the locations or anything. I don't know if that's something you can do. Look, I'm going to study film stuff. I don't know much about it yet. But seeing Burke in real life, as a real set rather than just animated, was genuinely incredible. I think they did a fantastic job of creating the hall, creating the workshop, the cove where Toothless and Hiccup meet, and he puts the wing flap? No, but the tail bit on. Genuinely, I don't think it could have been more perfect if they tried. Honestly, it was just the actual visuals of that film were gorgeous, and I cannot critique that. I can critique the costumes, but I'll get to that in a minute. Oh, here's the thing. So, this is as close to the sort of debate on casting that I'm probably going to get. I did really enjoy the in-universe explanation of the different races in the film. I'm not going to get too into everything, because obviously online everyone was like, oh, Vikings are this, Vikings are that. I'm not going to get into that because it's a fictional film. But the in-universe explanation of just different tribes of people who all have a common goal coming together, I thought was quite good. I thought they handled it well. It didn't feel too shoved in. It was a little bit shoved in, but for the most part, I do like that they addressed it. I don't know if they were going to do that originally or if it was in response to the casting choices that were made and people's response to it. But all in all, I thought they handled it pretty well. So yeah, that was quite good. Quite good? Yeah, it was a good part. Gerard Butler being in it as Stoic, fantastic. It was, because obviously none of the characters really sound like themselves anymore, but having Gerard Butler there as Stoic was such a welcome thing. It was really nice just at least having one voice. It's that's the character I know. I can't read my own handwriting. Okay, so I'll get onto scenes that were cut from the original in a minute, but there was at least one new scene added that I really personally enjoyed. It did make me laugh. So spoilers, I guess, but when Hiccup first enters the training, the dragon training arena, and they're all sort of being why are you here, blah blah blah, Snotlout sort of makes a jab at his name, being your name is Hiccup, and in return Hiccup goes, your name is Snotlout. And it's really funny because obviously when you first watch the film and you're these names are so weird, but none of the other characters are really addressing it. It was a very welcome scene. It did make me chuckle a lot in the theatre. So yeah, and my last point was just, it did make me laugh. The humor was there. It didn't try and take itself too seriously. It was still a funny film. Lots of the jokes were still there, the visual gags, the Hiccup struggling was very funny. We'll get on to jokes that didn't land so well. Okay, so that's the good part. It's smaller than the bad part. I will... Yep. Now on to the bits that I found bad/weird. I feel like saying bad is a bit too mean, but there was definitely bits that I sort of thought were strange. So first up is costumes. So I think the costumes in and of themselves were fine, right? They looked like the characters. It makes sense kind of what they were wearing. My issue with it is that there's kind of two main issues. One, Hiccup's green tunic, which sometimes looked blue, kind of looked like I could buy it at JD Sports. I don't know if that's true. I don't know what it was made out of. I don't know if it's just how it was filmed that made it look strange. but it weirdly like kind of looked like a jumper I could just embroider myself. So it's not like they looked cheap, they just looked shop bought. And this is not me trying to be mean to like the costume department of that film at all either, by the way. I'm sure they did amazingly well with what they had. But also they looked too clean. And what I mean is, like, these are characters that are meant to be Vikings. And like, Vikings did have good hygiene, right? Like, I'm pretty sure it's well documented in history. They like bathed regularly and all that. But I feel like characters that are actively running through the forest and doing dragon training, their clothes should have a little bit more wear and tear than it sometimes looked like they did. I know that's just me being really nitpicky, but it did slightly remove me from the experience. So that's probably more of just a me thing. But it is something I just found a bit odd. Yeah, okay, so previously I mentioned that the music was really good. And I stand by that. However, Test Drive, one of the most famous scenes from How to Train Your Dragon. So, like 90% of the song was still there. But the part where Hiccup and Toothless like separate and they're free falling, like in the original animated one, it gets like very anxiety music. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know music terms. But it sort of gets like very loud, like it makes your adrenaline kick in. But in the live action, they kind of cut it and put in this weird angelic singing. And I don't know how else to describe it, but also the way it was put in felt like it had been, like, part of this original song had been cut out. They put this angelic singing in and they forgot to, like, make it fade in correctly because it was kind of jarring the way it came in and then left. I mean, Test Drive, it's still, like, a nice scene in this film, but for reference, like, my own personal enjoyment of it, even today, and I've seen the Test Drive scene at least 50 times, like, minimum, I still get, like, so excited, like, I start shaking and everything. This film, it didn't hit. I wasn't that excited. Like, the scene came and went, and I was like, okay, it was there. So that's slightly disappointing, in my own opinion. Yes. Okay, so I did mention that Snotlout was a great character. However, and this is not a bad thing, this is just one of the weird things. For anyone that's seen the, like, extra TV shows, specifically Race to the Edge, you might be aware of a character called Gustav. And somehow, and I don't know how they managed this, Snotlout's character in the live action is as if Snotlout and Gustav were just one character. Like, a lot of the time he is Snotlout, but even visually, he looks more like a grown-up Gustav, which isn't a bad thing. It was just slightly strange, because every now and again, I'd be like, wait, no, this isn't Gustav, this is Snotlout. And it was like amusing in a strange way, because obviously, this is still Snotlout. I just found it very entertaining, just, like, to myself. I was like, this is just a weird... I don't know quite how they managed it. I don't know particularly which bits caused me to think it was Gustav. But that's why I just said this was, like, a weird thing. I don't know. I hope that makes sense. They added... Next point. They added, like, a weird sort of new plotline for Astrid's character, which is... I've just put down here as Astrid Chief storyline. They, like, added a scene when they're talking about the Book of Dragons, and Hiccup and Astrid are the only ones left. And in the original film, it's, like, a 15-second scene where he's like, oh, I guess it's just the two of us, and she's like, read it, and pushes it towards him. But in this, it turns into, like, an argument between the two of them, where Astrid is, like, confronting Hiccup about his sort of lack of enthusiasm to fight dragons, and how he's just gone by easily in life because he's the chief's son, and he sort of agrees with her, and that also gets her angry. But she sort of brings up that one day she's going to be chief and that things will be different, and it was a really weird addition, because like, Astrid is a character that obviously she's good at what she does, but I don't think she ever in any of the original stuff showed an interest in being the chief. She wanted to be, like, in charge and recognized for what she could do, but I don't think it was like she's loyal to people, so I don't think she would want to be chief. She would be loyal to the chief. So I just found it a strange addition, and so did my friends. Yeah. Okay. Another slight thing to the casting. There was, like, in-universe jokes about how the twins didn't really look like the twins. There's one line where they're saying, oh, our own mother can hardly tell us apart, and Gobber goes, it's uncanny, because now they look very, very different from each other. And I found it a bit strange. It kind of just felt like they were aware that people weren't happy with the casting, so they tried to make a joke out of it, but it kind of fell flat in my opinion. Like, I don't know, just yeah, it was just strange. It just kind of made me like, it took me out of the moment and back to all the online debates about, oh, the casting this, the casting that, and I was like, I'm no longer absorbed with the movie. I'm thinking about all these different opinions people have. Next point. Oh, speaking of Gobber, by the way, he was English, like fully an English Gobber. It was very strange. He did not sound like Gobber at all, because you know how in like there's so many jokes about the original animated film where it's like all the adults are Scottish, all the kids are American, and like when they hit puberty, maybe like they get a Scottish accent. Gobber was the only like English guy. He was the only one with like an English accent from what I remember, which was really jarring. There was another scene actually. So obviously there's the scene where Hiccup and his dad are at his house, and Stoic is like giving Hiccup an axe and saying, when you hold this axe, like you hold all of us, blah blah blah, you think like us, you talk like us. And I did lean over to my friend beside me and just go, well, Gobber doesn't talk like them. A terrible joke, my finest joke of the day. I'm not a funny person. Yeah, no, it was just a strange choice. It can't have been that hard to find a Scottish actor to play Gobber. Moving on to the dragons, actually, just for this next point. They looked kind of strange. So obviously, within, like, when you're making a live action, they're probably not going to look exactly like the original animated dragons, because they probably stand out like a sore thumb. But in an effort to make them more scary and realistic, they sort of stopped looking like the dragons. Like, the Zippleback, for instance, from what I remember, and again, I have slept since I saw it, it was yesterday, my memory might not be entirely correct, but the Zippleback in the animated has, like, round heads, but in this one it was more snake-like. I am trying to, like, do the thing with my hands here, it might not be working. And also the Monstrous Nightmare, Hook Fang, in the animated show and film, he only has 2 horns out of his head, but in this he had 3. And also, Meatlug was blue and looked more like a slug than like 3 boulders. It was just, I get why changes were made. It was to make it look more real, I guess. Although Toothless kind of looked the same, so I don't quite know. It just, the whole time I was watching, I was like, the dragons just look odd. I mean, don't get me wrong, they looked scary, so they did, I guess, make more sense in universe. It was just, they looked not like how you were expecting, which did take you out of it a little bit while you were trying to wrap your head around it. Speaking of Toothless, I didn't bond with him as much, so when he gets captured in the film, like, you're obviously meant to feel really sad. You're like, oh no, Toothless. I didn't feel as much. Like, I love Toothless, don't get me wrong. So, like, the fact that I do like Toothless, I think, made me, while watching this film, still be like, oh, I'm sad because it's at the point of the film where he's on the boat, blah, blah, blah. But me and all my friends agreed that something about this Toothless, the live action one, you didn't bond with him as much. You spent just as much time with him. You had the same scenes, the same jokes, but something was just lacking. Like, you didn't care about him as much, and there wasn't as much of an attachment with him. And I don't know how they did it. I don't know what was missing. I don't know why I didn't bond with him. But this specific Toothless, I just didn't have as many positive feelings towards, and that's kind of, I don't know how else to explain it. What's my next point? Okay. So, I'd like to preface this by saying, I think Mason Thames, I think it's Thames, please correct me, is a good actor, don't get me wrong. So one of my favourite films is The Black Phone. I'm really excited about Black Phone 2 coming out. And in that, he is phenomenal. Also, like, as a kid actor, he did so well. And in this film, I will say, like, 80% of what he's, like, him as Hiccup is fantastic. The, like, visual gags of, like, the physical ones of him running around after Toothless, being thrown around, like, when he's excited, when he's sad. Spectacular at what he's doing. As an English person, though, the sarcasm was lacking. I'm not saying England's the only people that do sarcasm, obviously. I mean, Australia exists, but as someone that's an incredibly sarcastic person to the point where sometimes my friends can't tell if I'm genuinely insulting them or if I'm just being sarcastic, so many of the sarcastic moments with Hiccup just didn't hit for me, which is really sad because Hiccup was like one of my favorite characters and still is one of my favorite characters because of how sarcastic he is. I'm sure it influenced me in some way, but it's, I think, a good example. Like, I don't know if it's because, sorry, I'm trying so hard to think of what I'm trying to say, but I'm not sure if in the original, Hiccup's original voice actor, whose name I cannot remember right now, if it's just because of how his voice is that makes the sarcasm work, if he actually just is good at sarcasm and maybe Mason isn't. But just certain scenes such as the "thank you for nothing, you useless reptile" just lacked the sort of hit that the original does, if that makes sense. Again, I would like to say, like, for 80% of Hiccup scenes, I would say fantastic acting. I mean, I'm not an actor, so I can't super criticize, but as someone who's very sarcastic, I feel I can criticize sarcasm. And I just think the sarcasm, not even just with Hiccup actually, but with other characters as well, like Gobber, just didn't quite hit as much. And I'm not sure why, if it was maybe directing or just the actors themselves weren't good at sarcasm. But most of the other scenes were fine, just when sarcasm was involved, just it didn't land, and that was kind of disappointing for me. There has been also a bit of a meme going around, like, on TikTok, I think, of like the post-credit scene and like how the directors expected us to act for that post-credit scene. So I didn't know there would be a post-credit scene. My friend actually told me about it. So we waited. God, it must have been like 10 to 15 minutes, like, after the credits. And don't get me wrong, the credits were, like, really cool. It had it flying all around Burke. You got to see, like, a bunch of the set and stuff. Very, very fun. I swear to God, the post-credit scene was just 5 seconds of reused footage from earlier in the film of the Book of Dragons. It was so disappointing. Like, it was not worth it at all. It was just, like, 5 seconds slapped onto the end of this film for no obvious reason. It was really weird. I don't know why they did it. Strange choice. And as for other scenes, there's 2 scenes that were cut that were kind of made me sad, which is the "excuse me, barmaid." I apologize for the Scottish accent. I'm not Scottish. That scene was cut. That made me really sad. Me and my friend have been quoting it, like, so much during, like, before the film and after the film because of how upset we were that it wasn't in it. I love that scene. Makes me laugh. I don't know if they just cut it because, like, he couldn't do the Scottish accent, but then again, I don't think anyone was expecting a good Scottish accent for that. It just sort of made me sad because it's such a funny scene. And also, and this to me just kind of creates a loophole in the film, after Test Drive in the original, like, after they've flown through Toothless's, like, plasma blast and slightly set themselves on fire, and they're laying down, and the Terrible Terror comes up to them, and Toothless, defending his fish, like, shoots a fireball in his mouth, and Hiccup says, "Not so fireproof on the inside, are you?" Which later on comes in handy, because when they're then fighting the Red Death, Hiccup uses what he learned from the Terrible Terror not being fireproof to defeat the Red Death by having Toothless fire a plasma blast into its mouth and sort of defeating it from the inside. In the live action, the Terrible Terror scene isn't there, so when they go to fight the Red Death, Hiccup says, "I hope this works," which I think it does in the animated, but it makes, like, in the animated it makes sense because it's like, oh, it's a bigger dragon, I know this works on small ones, I might be wrong. In this one, there's no reason, like, in the live action, there's no reason for this Hiccup to at all think that a dragon wouldn't be fireproof on the inside. That's where the fire comes from. He hasn't had the Terrible Terror incident finding out that actually dragons aren't fireproof on the inside. So he's just coming up with this insane idea to fire a plasma blast into this ridiculously massive dragon and just hoping it works. Like, it's such a small scene with the Terrible Terror, but by removing it, it does create this loophole of, why did Hiccup come up with this as his idea rather than something that he might think would actually make sense, you know? Like, it's just a small thing, but it slightly annoyed me. Another thing that slightly annoyed me, this film is like 2 hours long, by the way. They cut, like, other scenes as well, and they cut that. So I don't know how this film was like an extra half hour long. I don't know where the extra minutes came from. But again, and this is... this is probably not great, but like in the movie theater, I did keep like checking the time and just going, I've been in here for such a long amount of time and we're only at this scene, which is not what you want to be experiencing when you're watching a film. Yeah, it was just a really long film, and don't get me wrong, it was a good film for what it was. It just, I don't know if it needed to be 2 hours long, because the original is only about an hour and a half, so again, I don't know where the extra 30 minutes came from. But no, yes, that is all of my points, both good and bad/weird. I did give it a score on my own, because obviously, of course I would. I did say, as a film, like, in its own right, I said it's an 8 out of 10. It's a good film for what it is. There's a few issues with it, like, just as a standalone. But for the most part, good film, and if it was not related to a series that I already like a franchise I already enjoy, I'd probably watch it again, like if it came out on Netflix or something. But as a How to Train Your Dragon project, I was torn between giving it a 4 and a 5. I settled on 5 out of 10. Just watch the original. Just watch the animated one. Like, this is a fine film if you want to see what, like, Burke might look like in real life. But it doesn't really add anything. It doesn't do anything that amazing. Just watch the original and then watch the other films in the show is all I can really say. Again, this is not me trying to, like, say, oh, it was terrible. Like, I think it was good. But, yeah, that is Stranger Thoughts on the How to Train Your Dragon live-action film. Yay. I do know that this is not typically what happens on this YouTube channel, but I just felt like sharing my opinions because I love How to Train Your Dragon as a franchise, and honestly, I can't lie, when I love something, I do tend to just yap about it, and I have sometimes thought about just yapping into the void on the internet about my other interests, but I don't know if that's something you guys would like. This isn't exactly the format I would do, but if you guys would ever be interested in hearing me yap about my ideas and interests and thoughts on stuff I enjoy, who knows? But it would be just as higgledy-piggledy as this. I would try my best, but it probably won't be great. I do actually now need to get ready for work. I am dying of heat again. I am hating this heat wave. I will try and talk to you guys later though, because I think I should be filming an outro when I get back. Fingers crossed. If not, oops. I was much more tired after work than I expected when I got back. Yes, it has been another day, and I'm doing the outro for the video on another day. Would you expect anything else? I also just wanted to clarify, because I rewatched what I filmed yesterday. Obviously, those are just all my own opinions on the film, and if you do have different ones, that's completely fine. It is a good film. I was not trying to be as negative as I think I sometimes sounded. It is a decent film in its own right, and if you have different opinions to me, share them, because I think that's what's fun about being in fandoms, is sharing your different views of stuff. But yeah, I just wanted to clarify. It's like, everyone has different views of films, so don't take mine as like, whatever. But yes, thank you so much for watching this video. I know it's been a bit different than usual, a little bit all over the place, a little bit not what I typically do. I did find it fun talking about my interest and How to Train Your Dragon and all that. Like I said, I personally would find it more, not more enjoyable than what I do, but like quite fun to share my interests with stuff and do sort of deep dives into my own thoughts of things, but I don't know if that's something you guys would like. So please let me know if that is something you prefer, or if you prefer me to go back to sort of what I typically do, which, to be fair, I don't really have a typical thing anyway. I sort of just do whatever is currently happening in my life, and yeah, honestly, I think, because if I'm being honest, I think the next couple months, it's either going to be simple day in the life things again, or I might just not film, because I am going into university this year, which is scary. It is quite terrifying. So I do expect that to be maybe a video in the future, or I might just take a little bit of a break. But that's a future me problem. So yes, just want to say thank you for watching, and I hope to see all of you again in the next one. Take care of yourselves.